I am 84 years old, and I have let my own family forget I exist. You see, I became a ghost in my own home, a convenient ghost. Yesterday, my granddaughter asked me to remind her of my email password, not to help me remember it, to remind her, as if I'm just a filing cabinet for her life. I sat in my study after she left, and I knew I couldn't do it anymore. I decided to stop being convenient. Let me tell you what happened. It started on a Tuesday. Honestly, it was a very normal day. My daughter Eleanor called. Her voice was all tight, stressed. She said, "Mom, the Johnson Gala is this weekend. You'll watch the kids, right? The usual rate." It wasn't a question. It was her telling me what I would do. That same afternoon, my son David texted me. It said, "Left a box of old files in your garage. Need you to sort for tax stuff. Thanks. You're a lifesaver." I looked at that word, lifesaver. It felt empty, like a button he pushed. I was standing in my kitchen. I've made thousands of meals in that room. I looked at my reflection in the toaster, just a silver blur. That's when my grandson Liam came over with his new girlfriend. He said, "This is my grandma." Then he leaned in and whispered to her. He whispered, but I heard it. He said, "She's super low maintenance." Low maintenance, like a plant. I smiled and got them lemonade, but inside, something broke, clean, like glass. I didn't cry. I got angry, a cold anger. I walked through my house, really looked at it. My books I hadn't read in years. My piano, covered in dust. I used to play Chopin. My world had become so small, just the space their needs filled up. That night, I sat in Arthur's old chair. My husband, gone 5 years now. The leather sighed under me. I made a list, not a grocery list, a list of all the ways I had become invisible. I saw it then. I had helped them do it. I made everything so easy. I was the path of least resistance. Now, they just walked on the path and never looked down. So I did something. My first rebellion. I booked a trip. A week in Maine, at a place Arthur and I loved. I didn't ask about anyone's schedule. I just booked it. When Eleanor called again, talking about a problem with her caterer, I let her talk. Then I said, "That sounds difficult. I won't be available to help that week. I'll be in Maine." The silence was huge. She finally sputtered, "Maine? But the children." I said, "I'm sure you'll arrange something." My hand shook when I hung up. I felt guilty. But under that, I felt a little air, like a window cracked open. The week before I left was strange. David came over. He looked worried. He said, "Mom, is this about money? Are you feeling okay?" He was looking for an illness. He didn't see this was me getting well. Liam came by, confused. He said, "Grandma, who's going to help me with my history paper?" He just assumed I would. My little granddaughter Chloe asked if I was mad at her. I held her face. I said, "Never, my love. Grandma is just going on an adventure." They were all confused. The furniture had decided to walk away. Maine changed everything. The air was cold and salty. I walked on cliffs. The wind pulled my hair. I ate clam chowder alone, watching boats. I didn't feel lonely. I felt like myself. I met a woman there, an artist. She lived in a lighthouse. We talked for hours. She called me Margaret, my name. She said it like it meant something. My family hadn't said Margaret in years. I was just Mom, just Grandma. In that lighthouse, I remembered. I liked to argue about books. I liked bad paintings and good wine. I had dreams once. I put them in a drawer marked later. I decided later was now. Coming home was hard. The house was the same, but I was different. Eleanor was waiting for me. She had that look, the I need things look. Before she could start, I showed her my photos, the ocean, the lighthouse. I said, I'm thinking of taking a watercolor class. She blinked. She didn't know what to do with that. She said she needed a babysitter on Thursdays. I said my class was on Thursdays. She needed the tax files sorted. I said David should hire someone. I was not a switch to flip anymore. I was a door, and I was closed. Then came Sunday dinner. It was tense. Liam asked me for money, for a new game console. It was casual, like asking for the salt. I said, no, I'm afraid not. I'm using my money for my art class and a travel fund. The whole table went quiet. Eleanor put her fork down. It clicked on the plate. She said, Mom, this has to stop. This phase. We're worried. You're being selfish. Selfish. That word hung in the air. I took a breath. My heart was loud. I said, for 84 years I have loved you. I fed you. I supported you. I made my wants small so yours could be big. I became background noise, and you all learned to hear only the silence. I looked at their faces, stunned. I said, I am not a phase. I am your mother. I am Margaret. I am stopping, not because I don't love you, but because I do. And love should not make a person invisible. After that, it was cold. There were weeks of quiet, guilt. It hurt. Some days I sat in this study and the loneliness was so heavy. I wondered if I broke my family. But I kept going to my watercolor class. I joined a book club. Slowly, things began to change. Chloe asked to see my paintings, really looked at them. David hired an organizer and said it worked better. He asked me what my book club was reading. Then, one night, Eleanor came over. She didn't have a list. She didn't need anything. She sat in my kitchen and she just talked about her work, her fears. She talked to me, not to Mom, the helper, to Margaret. It was shaky, but it was real. So here I am, talking to this camera. The journey isn't over. It's still hard sometimes, but I am not a ghost anymore. I am here. If you are listening and you feel like you're fading away, stop. Stop being convenient. Be difficult. Be specific. Say no. Have a hobby that confuses them. Book the trip. It will scare them. It will hurt. But real love can handle the beautiful, inconvenient sound of you finally being seen. That first real talk with Eleanor in my kitchen, it didn't fix everything. You see, old habits are strong, in them and in me. For a few days after, I waited for the other shoe to drop. I kept waiting for her to call and ask for something, to slip back into the old way. But she didn't. Instead, she sent me a text. It just said, "The painting of the lighthouse you showed me, what was the name of that color? The blue-gray one." It wasn't a demand. It was a question, just for me. I stared at my phone. I typed back. The artist called it Storm Surge. She wrote, "It's beautiful." That was all. But it felt like a tiny, new door opening. Then David called. Not about files or favors. He said, "Mom, that book you're reading for your club, is it any good? I need something for a long flight." I told him about it. We talked about the characters for 10 minutes. He disagreed with me about the ending. We argued, friendly-like. I hadn't argued with my son about a book in 30 years. I hung up and I actually laughed. It felt good. But Liam was harder. The grandson who called me low maintenance. He avoided me. When he did come over, it was awkward. He'd just sit there, not asking for anything, not knowing what to say. One afternoon, he was in my living room, fidgeting. I was working on a watercolor at the table. He finally said, "Why are you doing all this stuff now?" I put my brush down. "All what stuff, Liam?" "This, the painting, the trips. It's just different." I looked at him. He looked so young and confused. "I got tired of being part of the furniture," I said. Simple as that. He frowned. "You weren't furniture." "What was I then?" He thought. "You were just Grandma. You were always there." "And what did Grandma do?" He shrugged. "You know, made food, gave us money, helped out." "And what did I like? What was I afraid of? What did I think about?" He went quiet. He couldn't answer. His face got a little red. That was my answer. He saw it in my eyes. He'd never had to think about me as a person. I was a function, a nice, quiet function. He looked down at his hands. "I'm sorry about what I said. To my girlfriend, it was rude." "It was true," I said. "I was low maintenance. I made sure of it. That's not your fault. But I'm changing the maintenance schedule." He almost smiled. Then he said, "Can I see what you're painting?" He came over and looked. It was a mess, really. My ocean looked like a muddy pond. But he looked at it seriously. He said, "The water's hard, huh?" And we talked about that, about how hard it is to paint water. For a few minutes, he saw me trying something, not just being something for him. That period was fragile, like walking on ice you weren't sure would hold. Some days, the loneliness was worse than before. When you're convenient, you're busy, you're needed. When you stop, there's a lot of empty space. I'd sit in Arthur's chair, and the silence felt too big. I missed the noise of them needing me. That's the dirty secret. Being used feels like being loved. Untangling that is the hardest work. I almost broke once. Eleanor called, crying. A big work project had fallen apart. The old Margaret surged up. My arms ached to hold her. My brain started making a plan. Go over, make tea, listen, fix it. I had to bite my tongue. I said, "Oh, Eleanor, that sounds terrible. I'm so sorry you're going through that." I just listened. I didn't offer solutions. I didn't say I'd take the kids. I just said, "That must feel awful." And she cried, and I listened. And you know what? She got through the conversation. She didn't fall apart because I didn't fix it. She just needed to be heard. Not fixed, heard. I realized I'd never just let her be sad before. I'd always rushed in to clean it up. I hadn't trusted her to handle her own storms. That was my next realization. I hadn't just made myself invisible. I'd made them weaker. By always being the calm harbor, I never let them learn to sail in rough water. By always saying yes, I never let them hear a no and figure out another way. I thought I was being strong for them, but maybe I was being weak for them too. That's when I realized what I'd done. I'd made them weak, and I'd made myself a ghost. The loneliness got worse after that. The empty space in the house got louder. One rainy Tuesday, it all just broke. I was looking for an old photo album up in the attic. I found a box of Arthur's things I'd never sorted. His old fishing hat, his reading glasses, and underneath, a bundle of letters. My letters. Letters I'd written to him before we were married, when he was overseas. I sat on the dusty floor and read one. I was 22. I wrote about wanting to see Paris. I wrote about a painting that moved me to tears. I argued with him about politics. My handwriting was bold and slanted. I called him my dearest Arthur, and I signed it with all my fire, Margaret. All my fire. I didn't recognize that girl. Where did she go? I put the letter down and I cried. Hard, ugly sobs that hurt my chest. I cried for her. I cried for him. I cried for the long, quiet life I'd built, where fire was not required, only a steady, low heat. I came downstairs, my face raw. I just wanted to hear a voice. I called Eleanor. She answered, distracted. "Mom, can I call you back? I'm in the middle of something." The old automatic, "of course," was on my tongue. But I was too tired. I just said, "No, I need to talk now." My voice sounded strange, flat. She got quiet. "What's wrong? Are you hurt?" "I'm lonely," I said. It was the plain, awful truth. "I am so lonely, Eleanor." The silence on the line was different, not confused, just still. Then she said, "Oh, Mom, just that." And I heard her put something down. She said, "Tell me." So I did. I told her about the letters, about the girl with the fire. I said, "I think I buried her so deep, I forgot where I put her. And now I'm just an old woman sitting in an empty house, and I don't know who I'm supposed to be anymore." She listened. She didn't try to fix it. She just said, "I don't know what to say." And that was okay. That was real. Then she said, "Do you want me to come over?" And I did. So she came. She didn't bring the kids. She brought soup from the deli. We sat at my kitchen table. I showed her the letter. She read it, her fingers tracing my young handwriting. She looked up at me, her eyes wide. "You wrote this?" she whispered. She was seeing a stranger who was her mother. It was the hardest moment. To be seen as a stranger by your own child. "That was me," I said. "Before I was your mom, I had all this feeling, And then I had you and David, and I wanted to be steady, so I put the fire away. I thought that's what a good mother did. She reached across the table and took my hand, the one with the rivers and tributaries. She held it tight. I think, she said slowly, maybe we liked you steady because it was easy for us. I'm sorry we never asked about the fire. We sat there for a long time, not talking much, just sitting in the cost of it all. The cost was me. The cost was her not knowing her own mother. It was a loss you couldn't get back. But sitting there, with her hand on mine, in the quiet kitchen, it wasn't fixing it. It was just admitting it. And somehow, that was the beginning of something else. Not a solution, just an acceptance. The ice was thin, but we were on it together. The ice was thin, but we were on it together. And that's the thing about thin ice. You can't stay there. You either go back to the safe, frozen shore, or you move forward, hoping it holds, hoping you find solid ground again. We moved forward, slowly. That day with the letter changed something. It wasn't a magic fix. It was a truth laid bare on my kitchen table between the soup bowls. And you can't unsee a truth. Here's what I learned, sitting here in all this quiet. I was wrong about love. I thought love was about making yourself small so others could be big. I thought it was about silence so their voices could be heard. I thought being a good wife to Arthur, a good mother to Eleanor and David, meant being a calm, blank page for them to write their stories on. But a blank page has no texture, no history. It's just waiting. I made myself into that. I thought I was being selfless, but it wasn't selfless. It was safe. It was easier to be needed for what I did than to be known for who I was. Because being known is terrifying. They might not like what they find, and I was wrong about them too. I thought I was making them strong by carrying all their burdens, but I was making them helpless. I never let them struggle. I never let them hear no from me. I smoothed every path until they forgot how to walk on rough ground. When Eleanor's work project fell apart and I just listened instead of fixing it, she found her own way. She was always capable. I just hadn't trusted her to be. I'd made my children and my grandchildren into people who saw me as a function because that's all I'd ever shown them. I taught them how to treat me. That's a hard pill to swallow at 84. You have to look back over a long life and see your own fingerprints on the cage. So what's the lesson? It's simple, really. Don't make my mistake. Don't confuse love with convenience. Love is not a silent agreement to disappear. Real love is noisy. It's messy. It has arguments about book endings and bad paintings of oceans. It has space for your fears and their fears to sit at the same table. It says, I am here, and I am me, and I love you as me, not as a service. My advice, especially if you're my age and feeling like a piece of the furniture, stop. Just stop. You don't need to have a big fight. You don't need to book a trip to Maine, though I recommend it. Start small. Say no to one thing you always say yes to. Buy the paint set. Join the Tuesday book club. When they call with a problem, just listen. Don't solve it. Say, that sounds hard. See what happens. It will feel strange. It will feel selfish. The guilt will come hot and fast. Feel it, then do it anyway. Reintroduce yourself, not dramatically, just in pieces. I'm reading this book. I don't like that television show. I'm tired today. Be a person, not a portrait on the wall. And here is the hope, the real solid hope I found in all this. It is not too late. Maybe you don't have decades, but you have now, and now is enough. Now is the only time we ever really have. I am 84. My hands shake. My bones ache. But I saw the Atlantic Ocean last month, and I felt its wildness in my chest. I made a terrible painting, and I laughed at it. I had a real conversation with my daughter. These are not small things. They are everything. You can start today, this afternoon. You can put down the burden of being convenient. It is a weight you were never meant to carry. So I'm recording this for you. If this story, my story of a woman who finally woke up, meant anything to you, don't let it end here. Let it be a beginning for you. If you're watching this, hit that subscribe button. Turn on the notifications. It sounds silly, but it tells me I'm not just shouting into the void of the internet. It tells me this matters. Leave a comment. Tell me, just in a few words, what is one thing you stopped doing to be convenient? Or what is one thing you will start? Your story might be the hand that pulls someone else out of the background. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Maybe it's your friend, your sister, your own mother. Maybe it's for you to watch again on a day when the guilt feels too heavy. That's all I have for you. My name is Margaret. I was a wife to Arthur for 55 years. I am a mother, a grandmother. I am a beginner watercolorist and a terrible bird watcher. I am here, and so are you. Don't let them or your own old habits tell you any different. Just be there, fully, awkwardly, inconveniently. There is such freedom in it, such a fierce and quiet joy.